Well, can I thank you very much indeed for coming. Emma, with your son Andy, and also David Bodie. Very good to see you here this afternoon. Emma, first of all, I want to thank you for the visit you arranged for us when we went to Leicester. And that was very interesting for us because we met a mother and her children who had been affected by sodium valproate. And indeed, I remember very clearly listening to one of the young men who was at university, and that was interesting. Others were a bit more disabled, and so we saw a bit of a spectrum. And that was very informative to us. We've then, of course, had the oral hearing on the 20th of November, and I am conscious that things may have changed since then in your minds and what you want to tell us. But just thinking about that, I mean, first of all, FACSaware, of course, was launched in 2013 by you, and you've been with it all the time. And you've produced a number of reports for the media, for regulators, for politicians, and they're based on the views expressed through your networks. And that has been very interesting, and I know that you have 375 members on your Facebook page and 400 followers, so it's quite a cohort of people who you relate to and inform, and indeed help when they need some help from you. Obviously signposting local support services, and represented by lead day solicitors. We know that, and David might be saying a word about that later. First of all, just thinking about the oral hearing in November, you set out 6 different aspects that you would like us to listen to, and they were interesting, and we've taken those on board. And then you wanted to explain to us what you wanted to see going forward. And again, we've been examining that, your top 3 priorities. And some of the things that have concerned you since that call for evidence has been about the closed archive files. And we can say a word about that. The NICE guidelines. And some other issues that you raised. So it was a very full meeting and extremely helpful to us. So today, what we would like now is for you, thinking about what took place in November, 5 months further on now. This is your meeting, this is your opportunity to tell us things that you think we ought to know, because we're getting towards the end now of our fact-finding sessions. And of course, writing this report is going to be a Herculean task, and we're ready for that. We realise that not everybody's expectations will be possible for us to recommend, because they may not be things that we can see should be implemented, because we are very anxious that it should be a practical report, that what we recommend can be implemented. It's not just something high in the sky that we wish for, but it needs to be grounded. And there are particular issues that we know you certainly want to see in the report, and we want to hear from that today. So perhaps you would like to start off, Emma, and tell us what you'd like us to hear, what you think, again, should be recommended in the report, and particularly things that might have changed in the intervening period. And I know that you did raise some through Twitter and other things about how you would like things to be slightly changed. Things like well, I haven't got them quite here at the moment, but I came through, I think it came through social media or something, and you wanted for us to know. But it was about consent, it was about expert witnesses, it was about interest, and it was about product liability in the future. So it's over to you.
Okay. Thank you, panel, for hosting this, facilitating everything.
Could you just start for the screen to say who you are?
Yes.
And why you're here?
Hi, I'm Emma Friedmann, Campaign Director of FACSaware. I have epilepsy. I was prescribed sodium valproate Epilim and was not told that there was a substantial risk to my child. This is my son, and he has fetal valproate syndrome. Would you like to introduce yourself, Andy? Or do you want to wait till you finished your mouthful? If I could read this little bit and then, well, David, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, of course. I'm David Bodie. I'm a lawyer who's had quite a long association with this subject. I first acted for clients in this topic in 1999, and I continued to do so. Hello. And I continued to do so certainly until 2010, when a litigation that I had been involved in leading had to be discontinued. In the aftermath of that, I continued to liaise with families, and when I retired, I kept two interests alive. One was actually finishing up the administration of the litigation with the legal aid agency. And if I tell you that I completed that in February this year, you understand that it's quite a long time further. And of course, I've maintained links with the support groups, well, particularly with this support group, because Emma wouldn't let me retire in peace. And so my continued interest is maintained. But I think it would be fair for me to say that since I retired, I have regarded this still as unfinished business.
Okay.
I'm hoping you're going to help me finish it.
All right, thanks very much indeed. And we've got just about an hour, so if you'd like to start, Emma.
Hi everybody, my name is Andy Friedmann, Friedmann. I'm in FACSaware.
Thank you.
Okay.
Right.
I wanted to first of all seek consensus from the panel on this executive summary, just the one page. I'll read through it for sake. So, it has been proven beyond doubt and accepted by the pharmaceutical industry that there is an increased prevalence of physical and neurodevelopmental birth defects when valproate is taken during pregnancy. Would you accept that? Those exposed have lifelong disabilities and have been unable to access justice in the UK courts. The services required by those affected and their families are highly specialised. The taxpayer is paying for the services required and the pharmaceutical industry is not contributing. Our regulatory system is broken and needs to be fixed. Hence why you find people, hopefully, are going to move us in a step in the right direction. Andy, would you like to read the wish list now?
Immediate additional funding for local education, health care services, immediate and lifelong financial security for those exposed to valproate who present symptoms of valproate syndrome. Valproate services coordinated by professionals who descendant of valproate syndrome. Judge-led public inquiry into medicine and the research regression to focus on valproate.
Okay, thank you, Andy. This is included in the written submissions. What I've noticed from watching a substantial number of the oral hearings is that you've had a really, really nice conversation with the groups that have sat before you, the professional groups in particular, and I've been able to see from that where your particular areas of expertise, knowledge and interest is. So I've designed what I wish to talk about today based on the idea of having a conversation with you rather than me reading a script. And I have little bits for each of you. Right. But generally the requests, pictograms on the outside of the medicine boxes. So if a medicine has been shown to cause harm, it should have this circle with the pregnant woman inside. If there is inadequate knowledge about a medicine that will be prescribed to women who are pregnant, then to have the triangle on the outside of the box. This is now there on medicines in France, on the French anticonvulsant medications, they either have the circle or they have the triangle. And it's just there as a visual prompt. I would also like to see a symbol developed alerting men of the fact that medicines do affect sperm as well. And so this is something I found and just got printed off because I just thought it was, quite sensible, really. Now, patients who are receiving their medications in a dosset box, so from a pharmacy, and they're putting all the pills and they're not receiving the original packaging, and many are not receiving the patient information leaflet, so they don't know exactly what it is that they are taking. Their carers do not know. They are unaware of the side effects. They are unaware of what to do if they are experiencing a side effect. And I feel that's something that you can make a recommendation. The pharmacy bodies have been very helpful in this whole process, and I feel that they would, step up to that challenge of providing that. Right, Cyril, if I may come to you first. I've very much enjoyed watching the conversations you've been having about the registries and the database. It's something I feel really quite strongly about. And after speaking to GPs and other healthcare professionals and in my local area, GPs would very much welcome there to be a tab on the System 1 GP software to immediately upload things to the yellow card. Their time is pushed, and if they could just click that link and it would send through to the yellow card. Obviously the systems have to make sure that they operate with each other. There are other computer systems that GPs use, but if that could be implemented, then the yellow card information would be a lot more thorough, and the GPs wouldn't be spending extra time trawling through it all, thinking, okay, what's relevant, what's not. And then hopefully that yellow card information would feed into the general database that you've been discussing, that would then feed into these registries that could be set up when there was a product of interest. The enhanced summary care record. This is the copy of what I have in my area in Leicester. I've signed up to have my details and Andy's details on the enhanced summary record, but it's not been promoted enough. And I feel that to get a database of everybody's national records is going to take a huge amount of time, and a huge amount of additional information governance and legal frameworks and ethical questions around that. Enhanced summary care record is something that exists now, and if it could be promoted, that would be brilliant. Now, the Chief Medical Officer mentioned the ICD coding and the challenges that she has had trying to raise this with the World Health Organisation. Now, the World Health Organisation, Dr. Margaret Chan, recognised the valproate toolkit in 2016 as being a leader, a really, really good piece of work. So they are aware of teratogen-related syndromes. Now, I raised this issue of ICD coding back in 2014 at a APPG that Alex Shelbrook hosted. And I don't feel that there's been movement. You know, that's 5 years ago. I raised the issue then. I've raised it since. CMO is aware of it. And if these databases and registries are going to be effective, you know, UK is a global leader in health or whatever, and we should be able to influence the World Health Organisation. If that coding was there, it would greatly enable the process. Now, the thing about whether a registry should be mandatory or voluntary, you've had the conversations with the National Joint Registry and with the National Congenital Anomaly Red CSOS Registry and the Epilepsy and Pregnancy Registry. Obviously, one of them is mandatory and two are voluntary. I know for a fact that Andy, despite my obstetrician and neurologist having conversations while I was pregnant and they were discussing valproate syndrome, I know that he was not added to the Epilepsy and Pregnancy Register. It was there. Now, whether that sort of like backs up what Dr. Morrow was saying about the concerns over litigation and, if I put a child on there, then I'm at risk of litigation and my trust is, and all of that. But it strikes me that there needs to be, in order to get that sensible evidence base, there has to be something mandatory. You know, if you want to be treated with a medicine, then you should, I believe, maybe this is for Valerie to look at the ethical side of this, but I believe that I would want my information about how I get on with the product to be added to the safety data in order to help other patients. But that's a conversation that no doubt you will raise both sides within your recommendations. Cyril, would you like to ask me anything about
I really want to listen to think. You raised the question just very quickly of how you mandate a registry. That is really quite tricky, but we have been taking advice about that under GDPR, and we've been talking to council about that, so we're onto it, but we're not yet reached a conclusion.
Yeah, I think the opt-out,
Yes.
I think the National Joint Registry said that 95% of people were happy to be on the registry, so if there's only a 5% opt-out,
Yeah, I agree with you.
then, you know, so long as that option is there,
Yes.
I would agree with most of the people I think that have presented information to you that having an identifier as the national, your NHS number, that would be sensible.
Can I just add to that? Because we have drawn the distinction between a database and a registry.
Yes,
And the database would be mandatory.
yes.
But the registry, at the moment, we take up what you're saying and we have to think about that.
Yeah.
But certainly in order for us to get accurate information, we need a proper database to start with and then draw on that for the registry.
Yes, definitely. But I think something that the Congenital Anomaly Register was saying, the fact that they don't get back in touch with the patient because they have taken the opinion that the patient is going through an emotional time. You know, I mean that, and therefore they wouldn't want to be disturbed about it. Well, I'm sorry, but you know, that's again somebody else making a decision on behalf of patients when they haven't consulted the patients.
I'll say one other thing I may about the summer care record, because I've been involved with that for some years. But if you look at, I'm not obsessional about reading government documents, but if you look at page 94 of the long-term plan, you'll find there is a proposition there that people with chronic illnesses should own their own healthcare record, the whole record. And that would be a care plan and a record which would be interoperative with all the other records which are held on people who have long-term conditions like me, be they hospitals or GPs, System 1, Vision or IMMDS or whatever. And the notion there is that the notion there is that that enables health and social care to be coordinated by the person who is affected, not just the disease. So that would be an extension of what you propose. And I can speak out with this review that I very strongly favour that person.
Certainly, when I was a trustee of the Patients Association, one of my co-trustees who worked with was then working on an app you would have on your phone, which would contain a lot of that information for precisely that purpose.
There, he's shown me his.
Well, whichever healthcare need you were then confronted with.
This goes beyond this because it's got to be interoperative with everything else. Anyhow, so.
Okay, lovely. If, yes, back to the list. Right, Simon, quite a few bits and pieces about communications. You know, I have a bit of a bee in my bonnet about communications. But I think something that has upset me in my involvement, you know, which has only been really since 2010-11, has been the misinformation presented. And this is from a wide range of sources, but there has been the misinformation which is denying that informed choice in effect. It's not really supporting developing scientific knowledge to misinform people. It's not. It's just there are just big issues around it, and I understand the concerns that people have about fake news and this quack saying this and somebody else saying that and this person. You know, I understand that there's all those concerns, but at the end of the day, it should be for the user to decide, the person who is having that information to make that decision. But when the information comes from an authoritative body, so whether that's a government, big national charity, an organisation associated with government, that needs to be tackled, the whole evidence base and how we establish, you know, if you don't know, if these bodies don't know, they need to feel free to say, I don't know, there's inadequate evidence, this is what some people say, this is what others say. Now, something that I hope that you will be able to deliver in all of this, it's a change in the format, the patient information leaflet that comes inside the boxes of all medications. At the moment it's tiny print. After I've had chats at the community centre that you came and visited, I've had conversations with patients and I've said, you know, do you read the patient information leaflet? Oh no, don't bother, it's tiny words, they all say the same, and they're not taking it in. So I think if there could be some work done around the format of the patient information leaflet, and just some work around that would be really useful, and speaking to a wide range of patient groups, from people with learning disabilities, or to people who are struggling with their vision, like I am a little bit at the moment. The format of the drug safety updates and guidelines. So the MHRA will put out their drug safety updates, and NICE will put out their guidelines. What I find with the drug safety updates from the MHRA is when it comes through on emails, I've subscribed to various things that I am interested in. When it comes through into my email box, the first half of the sentence taken up in the subject box doesn't mention the product. And so if you're looking at it on a mobile device, you've got to click into the whole thing to read it all. So there's little bits and pieces like that. And also having a summary box, the top 5 things you need to be aware of. The cohort who are using it, well, the name of the product, the cohort who is using it, any contraindications, changing to restrictions, place to go for further information. Probably some other bits and pieces with that. And also to have an auto link in the prescribing software, so with these GP systems, System 1 and the various others, if whenever you clicked to prescribe a medication or to renew the prescription for somebody, a box popped up and said, have you read this alert? And for it not to be sort of like 2 pages, A4 that you've got to read, and if you want the evidence that backs up what's in the statement, you've got to click to 4 other research papers. That's the way it is at the moment, and it's not practitioner friendly, and we need to make these things, a bit more friendly. So that's on communication. Would you like to ask me anything about comms?
Well, you've raised some quite important practical points, actually. You will have seen some of the things we've said to other people throughout the hearings over the last 6 months have been around the system in all its different guises, being clear about what it doesn't know about a particular drug or device, as well as what it does know. So to your first point about women being given the information they need to make an informed decision, to exercise proper choice in a safe environment, absolutely the system should be clear about what it knows, but also what it doesn't know. And I think that is a culture change for the system. But we've explored that. You will have seen us explore that with
definitely.
So hopefully you get a sense of our thinking, emerging thinking around that.
Yeah.
I think as far as patient information leaflets are concerned, they're not user friendly, as you say. It should not be beyond the wit of the system manufacturer and regulator combined to be able to make them more user friendly. And I think that's something that goes way beyond sodium valproate, goes way beyond any particular individual medicine device. It's just true of information more generally. It's not just about the size of the font, the print. It's also about making it language that people will understand. Things have improved over the years a little bit in that regard, but there is still a long way to go.
I mean, the MHRA and when we've worked with them on the valproate toolkit and the wording to go on the outside of the box, the wording for the information booklets in 2016 and 2018, they have consulted us as patients and said, you lead, patients, you lead on what it is you feel is sensible language and presentation of this. And that has been very welcome. MHRA asked me to have a read through the Dear Doctor letter and make any changes that I wanted. So I did that, sent them back. I haven't gone back and checked whether my edits were used or not, but it's the fact that they communicated with me and what do you think to this wording? And there were a few bits that I changed. But it's just them asking, which is really nice. But the yellow card, these leaflets, I had to wait 6 months for a box of 500 for my FACSaware stall up in Leicester, and for the various presentations that I do, because they were waiting for a print to be done. 6 months, you know, which is outrageous. These need to be in all waiting rooms, just to prompt the patient, to make the patient understand that they are part of the process, empower them in a sense, and obviously to provide the regulators with greater, more useful information. Now this is something that the Medicines Communication Charter put together to promote a conversation between prescriber and the patient. You know, I can share a copy of this with you, but this was shared with such and such on the date by. I would like to help you get the best from your medicines, and to achieve that we need to work together. You know, though I am your doctor, you are the expert when it comes to things affecting you and your life. You know, I mean, it's a great prompt, and if all GPs were actually having that kind of conversation, then I think it would really, really help. But the fact that these things already exist, they're just not being promoted and they're not being used. So I think rather than completely, you know, just design something completely new, you know, let's see what's there first, and are we using it as it's been designed to be used. Misinformation, all right. I had a neurology appointment a month ago. These are still there in the waiting room, 2013. They're out of date. They don't highlight the risk of valproate, and just for them still to be there in a neurology outpatient waiting room, it's unacceptable, because there is no other information there. This is a symbol that was designed. Now, personally, all right. I mean, if you've got any ideas as a panel, what is
in the circle, the red circle? I can't see it.
It's a fetus.
And so it's thinking about future children, because they're fainter than the woman, as it were, so it's the future.
Okay, well, this is what was suggested by a charity when patients had already put forward that symbol, and when that is the recognised symbol. This symbol was pushed repeatedly at the valproate stakeholder meetings, repeatedly. All right, and it's that kind of thing that, well, the patients have said this is what they want, and yet somebody else is trying to dictate and push something on us. All right, so just you should be aware of that. That's kind of it on the communication side. But if you have any questions, then I'm happy to respond. Baroness, real challenge is irresponsible prescribing. It was Mental Health Awareness Week last week, it's Epilepsy Week this week, and when you just read through tweets that people are putting out there, and they're giving these huge long lists of 5, 10, 20 medications that they're being prescribed, and they're not being given information on them. I cannot believe that 10 medications have been tested against each other for short-term, long-term impact. And it is causing a lot of patients to completely lose trust in their medical professionals. That isn't good for the profession, it's not good for us patients, so that really, really needs to be challenged. You know, that the overdosing, the overprescribing, that here's a pill before a therapy. Now sometimes, you know, you need the pill, obviously. I'm only alive because of the pills I take. But I feel that this is something for the GMC, for them to put something in place and for them to actually start accepting what patients are saying. I think that's a responsibility. On to a political sort of point. When there was the development of the Health and Social Care Act, were there discussions about the dissemination of safety information? Did that come into play? I mean, I haven't read the whole act. I've seen little bits and pieces of it, but what I have seen with the private providers and the public sector NHS providers, there is an inconsistency, and private providers will do something voluntarily. There'll be a mandatory requirement, or there'll just be a loose guideline for NHS. It's sensible to bring it all together, but I mean, was this discussed as part of the Health and Social Care Act?
Do you know, I have to say, Emma, I can't remember. In my loft, I've got the whole of the bill. It was the longest bill that they'd ever had for a health issue. And you remember we had the pause in the middle of that bill, and then people brought in a whole lot more issues that they wanted to discuss. And what started off as quite a simple bill then became a Christmas tree, because everybody hung on everything else they wanted to see in the bill. And so I would have to go back and look at that, and certainly think about safety in the context you've put it. And to be perfectly honest, I cannot remember all the debates that took place, because it went on for a very long time, months and months and months. So I would have to look at that. And of course, what really matters is not so much the debate that took place when the bill was being debated, it's what's enacted. And it is actually the act that is the most important part, because that is what Parliament decided. And again, one would have to go right through the act again.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I mean, I think I suppose I saw back in when I gave evidence at the European Medicine Agency in 2017, the thing that I have noticed, the failure of the Evacuate Toolkit in 2016 to actually get out to the front line where it was needed, was this challenge of the dissemination of this package. And it wasn't just the UK, it was right across Europe, but the fragmentation of the NHS, the increased use of private providers to provide NHS services, the move towards a privately run NHS, the lines of communication need to be properly firmed up. Whatever you view about a privately run NHS versus a publicly run NHS, that's political, and I'm sure there are differing views here in the room, but there must be private patients going to the private sector must be protected, NHS patients must be protected, and it does all need pulling together, and it's not happening at the moment, and anything that you can do collectively to pull the systems together will greatly aid that.
Can I just say about bills that come before Parliament? Usually they start in the Commons. Sometimes they start in the Lords, but usually in the Commons. And you've got a first reading, second reading, committee stage, and we had in the Lords days and days and days and days of the committee stage, which enables anybody to come in at any time to debate it. Then you've got the report stage where votes are taken, and then you've got the third reading, and then you've got this bill do now pass. So that takes place in the Commons, and then it takes place in the Lords. And when we made alterations, modifications, which we do quite a lot to bills, it then has to go back to the Commons. They have to agree to our modifications, or they don't. If they don't agree, it comes back to the Lords. And then if we consider it again and say, no, we want to stick to what we want, it goes back again to the Commons, and then it comes back again to us. So passing a bill is a huge task. And, you know, to remember every strand that was discussed during that. And I wasn't involved in the Commons, I was only involved in the Lords. And in fact put down a number of amendments, some of which were accepted and some which weren't. And in between all that, there's a lot of negotiating going on with the department, with ministers, to see if they will agree to these amendments. And usually you try and get cross-party support. So you've got, in the Lords, of course, you've got those who don't have any party affiliation, independent, so you have to think of that. So it is a huge task. It is extremely thorough. And as I say, I mean, to remember every strand that was debated, I can't do that now.
All right. Okay. On to another point. A big movement lately has been towards online providers of prescriptions, delivery services, and also online providers of, you know, speak to a GP, speak to a health professional. This area needs a lot more regulation, and, you know, lots of us patients with severe medical conditions, we need to have that delivered prescription. And we also need, though, to have some face-to-face contact with our pharmacist. And our pharmacist needs to really be checking that we are still a functioning human being. And my concern with the online providers is that you're just being dispatched this medicine and you're not having that opportunity to chat with the pharmacist. There's been this wonderful push to get people to recognise the professionalism of pharmacists and the importance of going to a pharmacist before going and seeing your GP. And this is kind of like, it's just bypassing the professional, and pharmacists are so important in this, you know, in medicine safety and providing that information about the medicines you're taking and being that first point of call. So I have a lot of concerns. I've raised this with the MHRA. I think the community pharmacy groups have raised these issues as well. I'm very lucky that I've had the same pharmacist for almost 20 years now. But when he retires, will that small community pharmacy be seen as a sustainable business? I very much hope so, because that one-to-one, you know, he's seen me at some terrible points when I've had really challenging times with Andy. I've been in a real state of mental ill health, and he's been there, you know, as that person that I can just go to the top of my road and speak to. And there needs to be some kind of protection of those people.
Emma, can I just ask what sort of feedback you've had from the MHRA? It's a very important point. I've just received a notification on my system to tell me about my local online pharmacy. And of course it's one part of the system sort of spearheading, isn't it, away with sort of modern technology, whereas actually leaving behind really quite important parts that need to be all knitted together. And I just wondered whether the MHRA has been back to you with any consolation or consoling words that makes you feel this is going to be managed very well.
They are very concerned. I haven't been given an update on action, but you know, you get mail shots come through advertising the company. It's got the NHS logo. You assume it's an NHS service. No, it's not actually. And the MHRA are very concerned. Pharmacy bodies are very concerned. It's something that needs to be factored in to these regulations. You know, if they are going to provide a one-to-one, face-to-face contact within their service, well, let's see what that is going to look like. You know, these things all have to be assessed on their merits, and I hope you'll be able to follow that up really, because it is affecting a lot of people. Okay, now for Sonia, a couple of research points really. You probably found out the answers to these already, but what is the social and market impact of our current regulatory system? What research is being done on valproate and abnormal sperm and the outcomes? I think I may have mentioned before that when we had a lot of media publicity after the European Medicine Agency public hearing in 2017, I had 3 women contact me in the space of a week saying, I've just seen these children and heard this on the TV. Our children have signs of this valproate syndrome, but it was just the dad that took valproate. So I took it with Dr. Ian Hudson, CEO MHRA, back in 2013, and he confirmed to me that infertility that was mentioned in the patient information leaflet was actually about abnormal sperm. So, you know, I know that the MHRA are aware of that, the European Medicine Agency will be aware of that, yeah.
I know certainly when we looked at the sort of package of measures of research that the EMA put forward, as you said, they are aware of it. In terms of going forward, we have asked them, we've asked for an update on where we're at from actually manufacturers, so we are waiting on that. It's on our radar, we are aware of it. It's something that we haven't definitive answers on yet, and I suspect that may be because the research is ongoing. There isn't a definitive answer yet.
So this is something that needs to be incorporated in the database and for the registries to extract the data off. You know, this acknowledgement that there are environmental factors that will affect sperm, and somehow that needs to be extractable from a database. And
in some ways it's not straightforward to track teratogenicity when it's sort of mothers ingesting it, but in some ways it is more straightforward as a study. It is more difficult when you're looking at sort of impacts on fathers. That's not to say it can't be done, it is just that bit more complicated. Because it's always very obvious when the mother of the child is, it's not always so obvious with paternity. So that does add an additional complication.
Yeah, I mean, I've had questions asked in the House of Commons about this, and the response that I've had from Department of Health and Social Care or the representative has really not acknowledged the importance of that. And if we want to promote family planning and the idea of being responsible before you become pregnant or before conception, take responsibility for your body, then these things have to come out.
I think it is also, it is partly being caught up with the fact that this is an area that is a relatively recent sort of idea that actually sperm quality has substantial impact on children. It's not something that's been around an awfully long time. We've known for much longer about maternal impacts of medicines taken when children are in utero. The impact of sperm quality is something that just hasn't had the same impact and the same sort of profile. And it is beginning to get it more so now. You are beginning to get more and more studies that do show the impact of paternal age and things like that also. So I think it is an emerging area, and that may also be why the research is behind. It just simply is.
Yeah. Well, anything that you can do in your research searches to find systems that have been effective in monitoring that and obviously anything to do with valproate and the abnormal sperm studies, then that would be great, because a lot of people are seeking clarity on
I can
that.
absolutely see why.
Yeah. The intergenerational effect of valproate. You know, you've heard Bramwell talk probably several occasions. You know, she wants to know.
Yes.
Her friends, you know, want to know. We have these reports about children of women who were exposed to valproate, how their children are showing similar signs. That has to be established. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, again, absolutely, it is within the sort of the research that is going to be looked at going forward. The EMA, MHI are aware of it. So, but that's no consolation for people who want an answer now, is it really? But it will be done. But at the moment, it just isn't there.
Yeah. Now, I just want to make a statement. I am vaccinated. My son is vaccinated. I am not an anti-vaxxer. I'm not an ex-vaxxer. I like to ask for evidence. And after hearing Dr. Rain, the MHRA, mention the importance of the monitoring of vaccine safety and in any database or any research or registries, for that to be for it to be properly looked at. Okay, I've blanked out the inflammatory comments on this, but this is from the US, but that was the vaccine schedule.
The US is for the United States.
It does, yes. 1962, 1983, and this is the 2019 child vaccination schedule. Now, I have looked for information on impact of having this number of vaccinations in your childhood. It's a minefield. I'm not finding anything, but in my local GP surgery, I'm seeing leaflets promoting a vaccine during pregnancy, and where you look to see the safety data, obviously I'm a lot more vigilant and whatever, and I will immediately, right, okay, where's the safety data on this? It just says this product has been used in the US for a couple of years, and that's it. It provides no link to a research study. The vaccine in question is something that most people have during childhood, and whatever happens in this process, the monitoring needs to be looked at. You know, there's lots of, it's such an inflammatory issue. It's so challenging. If I put a tweet out or something questioning a research paper, the abuse that I'll receive back, and it's similar the other way around as well. Somebody advocating a vaccine will get abuse from anti-vaxxers, and then people that are anti-vaxxer mixed up with the ex-vax, which are mixed up with people like me that just, you know, want some clarity in the area. But we can't have this being the thing that we're all sat round again in 10 years' time saying, you know, if we just need to be aware and need to be vigilant, and free trade agreements and whatever being set up post-Brexit and whatever. Are we going to have the US vaccination schedule with no supporting evidence to show that it is actually improving child health and child outcomes? Are these things going to become bargaining chips? But that's just a in the air kind of question. But
I think in terms of things being added to the vaccination schedule, we do our own assessments. They are national assessments, they are not international assessments. So certainly when you look, nothing would be added to the vaccination schedule here without a thorough national assessment of it, and that will look at the data. So I don't think, regardless of Brexit, I cannot see that changing, because that is just the way that things are added to our schedule.
Okay.
Emma, I'm very conscious that we really have taken just an hour.
Okay.
But
okay.
I know we started a few minutes late, so if
May I
you'd
say
like an
3?
extra 5 minutes.
Oh, that would be wonderful. That would be
Okay.
wonderful, because I just have
Okay.
3 points for Dr. Brass, and then I'll answer anything. And allow David to speak if he wishes to. Sorry, David.
You're going to run out of time.
Dr. Brass, okay, there are various ethical dilemmas that you will have seen in this whole process. The things that kind of spring to mind to me are, is current practice ethical? All right, but looking forward, the fast tracking of medicines and devices, and the precautionary principle, and that minefield, and the regulation of herbal remedies to be considered as part of this regulation review. Herbal remedies including cannabis and non-invasive therapies. There's the things about cannabis and epilepsy and how it helps people who are in severe pain, who haven't responded to various things. There are huge questions around that, because it's a criminalised product. But if there are so many health advantages to it, if it is helping so many people where conventional medicines are not, all of that, I think, there needs to be some more proper conversation about that, and basically maintaining a precautionary principle. That's go on, Andy. I think that's enough now. I think you've got the last drop out there. Good. Any questions?
Right, well, thank you very much. I just want to thank you. I hope we've met your exam questions with at least thoughts. And they've been really good, stimulated a lot of questions that we've had. So I'm very sorry, David. I know you probably wanted to speak, but I'm afraid we've got other people waiting to come in.
I'll take 2 minutes of your time. The first thing to say is you've got a written submission, which is recently done, and I had a hand very bad. I think to my mind, the acknowledgement that you...
David, can you speak up?
I'll do my best.
Yeah.
The acknowledgement I think you have to make in your review of this subject is that the immense contribution that has come from patients, and I believe it was an unsuspected contribution, and it is right to say that the patients by themselves have done far more for the patient cause than the lawyers have ever managed to achieve. And as you can imagine, from someone who practiced for 37 years in medical law, that isn't an easy admission to make. But it is, to my mind, central to this review coming into.
Well, that's why we designed it as we did.
And I think it is also something which, having set that agenda, having contributed so much to it, it is critical. One of the things that this review disseminates is that good practice about patient participation goes far further than simply lab reviews.
Yeah. Very much accept that. Yes, thank you very much indeed.
I shan't say the controversial things.
Right. Well, thank you so much for coming. And I have to say, for all the work that you do when you're out of this room, working with all your members and all the rest of it. And David, I'm sure we'll hear from you again sometime.
Yes.
But thank you all very much, and thank you, Andy, for coming. Andy, hi. Andrew, bye-bye.
Hi, everyone. Hi, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.